If you can't get your body in a good place, you will never be able to get your mind in a good place. And I think we all deep inside want to progress in some way. I honestly believe that the mind is a muscle and must have resistance and pain and suffering to grow. There is no growth without change.
What if you could reclaim hours of free time each week, create legacy building wealth, and devote more energy to your passion projects without giving up on your career as a life-saving MD? Dr. Vikram Raya is a functional cardiologist, high-performance coach, and real estate expert, is here to give you the tools, strategies, and solutions you need to transform your life, unlock your limitless potential, and achieve greatness, all while freeing up your precious time. Welcome to Limitless MD. Let's dive in.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Limitless MD podcast. I have two special guests here that are going to really change your paradigm of thinking of how to practice, how to scale, and how to really have your mind ready for 2025 and be able to dominate. So I want to introduce Dr. Shefali and Bob Miglani. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
Absolutely. Good to see you guys. And so me and Shefali go way back. We're part of a high-end mastermind. And so we're swapping stories. And as you guys know, my background's in cardiology. And I was talking about how I'm around a lot of doctors who are interested in really shifting the velocity of their clinics and their practices. And I was able to have a conversation with Bob, her husband, and the conversation that followed is the result of why we're here on this podcast. And so, as you guys know, we're here to help doctors elevate in multiple categories, time freedom, financial freedom, sort of a mindset freedom, biohacking, and, human optimization. But really, as a core, doctors want to be better doctors. So, Shefali, do you want to a little bit share your story, your background about how you came about this? Because you're supposed to be in some clinic somewhere, just slogging away, but now you're this entrepreneur and you've started this company and you're helping. It's not even a business; it's a movement. It's a mission to help physician entrepreneurs all over the country.
Yes, Vikram. So I started my practice about 17 years ago, and it was an optometry practice. At that time, I thought I was brave. I opened up the clinic cold, put up some shingles and started practicing. And over the years, I had kids, but realized that I was getting buried in the practice management and seeing patients and the rigmarole of running a practice. And it was really defeating at times. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to step out of the hamster wheel. I would come home. I wouldn't even have the energy to talk to my kids or play with my kids. And I said, well, I have to do something. I can't do this. I had my third kid and I said, that's it. I can't take it anymore. I am going to do something different with my life. I love optometry. I absolutely love the profession. But as usual, the way medical practices go, we are slaves to the insurance companies. And I was just taking more and more insurance. I was part of more and more insurance panels, and the reimbursements were going down, and I was just working hard for the same dollar. So when I had my third kid, I said, I'm going to break the cycle. I'm going to pivot towards something specialty care in optometry. And I saw the need in my patient population. The need was that these kids who were wearing glasses and certain refractive error called myopia was getting worse, and that's linked with other sequelae, medical sequelae later on in life, such as retinal detachment. So bad stuff happened to these, can happen to these kids later on. So I needed to do something. But the learning curve was huge. So I stepped off. I created time in my schedule to learn. I went to conferences, learned the specialty care, how to execute that in my clinic. And I literally went to the conference I remember I was still nursing my third kid, and I would go with my, pump and, and then go to the conference. And it was kind of crazy, but I'm so glad I did that. But it started
So let
with
me
a
let me
vision.
ask you a question now. So because my the listeners are probably some of them are in the same boat, and so the question really becomes, Shefali, you get to this point where you've hit a significant amount of resistance. We as physicians are used to resistance. We push through. That's who we are. But
Yeah.
when you hit that resistance, how many years were you into your practice at that point?
I was into my practice probably good 7 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The 7 to 10 year itch is usually what happens, right? So that resistance was
Yeah.
so, um, I guess, suffocating to the point where you felt something new had to be done. So a lot of people come to that same place, but they realize, oh, I'm just gonna truck through until I get to the other side. What was the breaking point? Was it just like was there a specific instant, or was it just like an
Yeah.
overall feeling of dread, like you didn't want to go back to like you didn't enjoy the work you were doing anymore?
All of it. So at that point, I think it was about 10 years ago now, 2013 actually to be exact. I got a scathing review on Google
Mm.
about how something fell through in the practice, and this patient was really really upset, and she put up this review, and it destroyed me. And I said to I couldn't. That was like the last straw.
Mm.
And I mean, review is a review. Now it doesn't bother me, but back then, as a new practitioner, and I took my private practice. It was my baby, and somebody writes this review, and I'd gotten previous bad reviews and many many good ones, but somehow this one was just special,
Yeah.
and it broke me, and I didn't want to go back to work. I didn't. I said something has to change. The pain was great enough, and I had a vision, and I had this need to want to serve this patient population, the subset of kids. Also, that also carried me. So there was a vision, or there was this motivation and mission that I wanted to be on. And it kind of matched. I said, okay, I need to get off this platform and
Yeah.
go to the next platform and serve my patient population in a different way. And my husband was there to support
Yeah.
me. So
I was gonna bring Bob in
yeah.
now. So Bob Miglani, for you guys who are just meeting him for the first time, is a man of many traits, and boring is not one of them. So he has industry expertise in multiple categories. He, as a franchise owner for many years, he owned multiple franchises, food franchises. He has a background in biomedical with Pfizer, and then he's a well-known speaker to a lot of the corporates and the Fortune 500. And then he took all of this knowledge and he's created this company, Hoot. So, Bob, you want to quickly talk about your background a little bit and what drove you to create Hoot?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that, Vikram. So I think the first is that I grew up in America, delivered newspapers. I worked at the Dairy Queen that we had growing up. And then, I thought the big thing was, hey, you got to go work at a big company. And I did. I worked at Pfizer for 20 some odd years. But at some point, I got tired of corporate life. I got that 7 year itch. It was actually it took me a little longer to get that itch, but I got that itch a little longer. And I think what's interesting, you guys were talking about, is that what is that point of no return? It is that point where you're sick and tired and you're not going to take it anymore. I think that's really, really powerful for me. And that was the point for me was at Pfizer. I was like, I am not going to sit here and just wither away and see the world change around me. I need to grow. And I think we all deep inside want to progress in some way. So I left. I left Pfizer. I wrote some books. I became a motivational speaker, author on change. I wrote a book called Embrace the Chaos. We should hit the bestseller list and then make your own luck. And again, what I started doing was to hone my craft at seeing the world and people change, the lens of change and how human beings change. And I saw her business. And so over dinner, actually, with our kids, she was frustrated. And I said, what's happening in your market, in your world, is you're getting commoditized and you need to pivot.
Let's stop there.
Yeah.
So doctors are commodities. So what is a commodity and what does this mean, commoditized? And how does that apply to the medical landscape that a lot of our listeners are dealing with?
Yeah. I think my sense of this is that insurance companies have a very clear objective to make as much profit as possible and pay as least as possible for reimbursing doctors for the work that they do. Doctors are not even called doctors. They're called providers. And I saw this change quite a bit as my perch at Pfizer. I worked with medical associations around the world. The World Medical Association, to the Germans, to the AMA, to all these societies around the world. And I saw a huge change and shift from the idea of doctors being healthcare free providers to have clinical autonomy to ones where they were more, stringent and insurance plans controlled everything. And so I saw all of that around the world, that shift take place. So providers.
What years were these when you started seeing this mega shift?
This was 2008 around the world. And then 2002 or 2012. And actually was about to write a book called Disillusioned Doctors. And my agent loved it, but it was so complicated. And I was so busy, I couldn't do it.
That sounds depressing too.
Yeah, it is. We did a survey, and we did a survey of doctors around the world, and we noticed most were unhappy, dissatisfied, and stressed out. Huh. And they were stressed out not because they didn't make enough money, because they didn't have enough time for quality patient care. And to me, that was what noticed with Shefali's practice was time is what is pulling apart the doctor-patient relationship. Patients don't have enough time. Doctors don't have enough time. They're rushed to see more and more and more and more and more. And they get in this hamster wheel. And I saw that in Shefali's practice in her. I said, you're just on this hamster wheel and it's going to break. But if you like patient care, you've got to figure out a different way. And she was to pivot.
So what's the pivot? What's the solution? And looks like, someone told me that every problem in the world is a business. So you saw a problem initially just for your own family.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, Shefali saw the problem. That's right. She's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I saw where it was leading me. It was 10 years. I looked back and I said, wow, 10 years has gone by since I graduated optometry school. And this is what I have to show for, an ever busy life. That's not a medal that I want to wear. I don't want to be a busy mom. I want to be a present mom. I want to be a present wife. I want to be a present human being within my own life. And I just saw that the next 10 years are going to go by if I didn't do anything. So the pivot, I needed to do something different. Not that I was going to get a result right away, but I knew that in 5 years, the results will show if I pivoted and did something different with my life, but sacrifice something in the present.
So Shefali, one of the pivots I heard was going to a specialty. Now, a lot of doctors are already specialists, but what's the secondary pivot that happened on top of that, or what the innovation that you guys thought about?
I needed to. The innovation that we thought about was in my practice that I needed to educate my patients in a different way, so that they could. The innovation was that I had this sales funnel. Every doctor is in sales, whether you know it or not, or it could.
You didn't admit it in the beginning.
I did.
I mean, you were like
dirty word.
Like,
I was like
sales.
Yeah, sales is a 4-letter word in MD lexicon or an OD lexicon.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I grew up in sales and marketing, and this is what happened over dinner. And she said, she's like, oh, these patients don't get it. These parents of these children who are the patients, they have children, they have myopia. The parents don't get it. They're not signing up for this specialty private pay treatment. Costs $2,000, $3,000, whatever the thousands of dollars. They don't get it. I'm like, well, wait, what are you doing? How are you educating them? So, I have this clinical. I'm like, this is not a medical problem. This is a marketing problem. She's like, no, it's not. It's an education problem. I'm like, no, it's not. So we fought over this. And ultimately we decided it's both. It's an education problem and it's a marketing problem.
Yeah, right. So then he said, well, let's go down in the basement and shoot some videos. And I said, what are you talking about? I don't do videos, basically I wrote a script. He says, write a script of what you want to tell the patients. And I wrote a script and he basically tore it apart. And he says, I don't understand anything. It's all about, I don't understand these medical terms. It's too clinical. And I said, well, you have to be clinical because this is what, so he translated it into the layman's term, and it was brilliant. I shot the video. I shot like probably 5 videos at that point in our basement and put it up, or I used to email it to my patients at that point, and I started seeing the conversion conversions started to go up.
There it is.
Right. I
There's
said,
the
wow, they're
innovation. That's awesome.
understanding what I'm saying finally. So it was a great, the innovation was that it was a great match. There was a problem. We solved the problem together. And he and I were a great match at what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And
So there's a lot of things I want to unpack here. One, sounds like as a physician, if you really want to be a business owner physician and an entrepreneur physician, perhaps, you know, you have the visionary or the medical professional, and you may need a business owner or operator or an expert in the science of, you know, entrepreneurship to really balance it. Number two, if you're doing anything private pay or anything non-insurance, if you don't have a handle on marketing, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, sounds like. And number three is version 1 is better than version none. So get started in the basement if that's what you need to do. So I love that.
absolutely, you got to start somewhere. Progress, not perfection, right?
yeah.
You just have to execute.
Yeah. One thing I think is really important is that, and I think you mentioned this earlier, is just how do you know if you're a doctor listening to this podcast and you've got so many doctor fans, Vikram, I really applaud you for really, I mean, you've created this movement of doctors who want to grow and beyond, you know, being a doctor, being a better human being. I love that. So thank you for what you do. I think the question is, how do you know when to push through the resistance of the same old, to shift, to pivot, to say, okay, enough is enough? And I think pain is a great driver of growth. I honestly believe that the mind is a muscle and must have resistance and pain and suffering to grow. So without pain and resistance, we will not grow. So I think the question is how much pain can you take? And most doctors can take a lot of pain.
Oh, yeah,
Medical school. Right?
When you have to choose between push and pivot, most people push. And 'cause
Right.
they have a high pain threshold. And also fear of the unknown. Hey, this is a suffering that I know. What happens on the other side when I'm have to go into the unknown? It could be even worse. Who knows, you know?
That's
And-
right.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
The last thing was, and I want to definitely let you continue. It's, you know, if you look at DISC scores or like personality scores, most doctors are what we call SC. They're certainty driven. Like if you're talking about human needs, or like SC is more like, you know, steady, fast, conscientious, introvert, data, analytical oriented kind of folks. And, you know, taking that quote unquote risk is actually, it goes against the grain, if you will.
That's right. That's right. In fact, I was just going to compound on that and build on that. In our work that we did, you know, when I looked at medical, you know, societies around the world, doctors choose to go into this profession for exactly that reason. It's a free profession, had clinical autonomy. It was certain. You certainly had a job because, you know, people, you know, you needed help, you know, healthcare everywhere in the world. And it was guaranteed employment in a way, shape, or form. So to say to the doctor, hey, you need to pivot, you know, it's like, what? No. That's a core of my identity. I'm a doctor. I'm not a salesperson. You know, that's like, I hear this all day long. And yet you are. You're influencing patients for positive behaviors. So I think it's absolutely right, is this notion of it. So Shefali, I mean, I think her thing was, look, I am so sick and tired of this hamster wheel. I need to get off. And that's kind of where our innovation was in saying, look, how do we, yes, you can continue to do majority of your business traditionally, but do this little side thing. It's kind of like a side hustle, pivot, go into some sort of specialty care. But in that business, you really need to be a marketer because you're not allowing the insurance companies to send you patients.
Let's talk about this, Shefali. I want to hear about your practice. So your original practice was insurance. Whatever drove to your offices, and then whatever, few items that you were able to deliver the services. But now you went into becoming focused, and you got off the insurance payrolls, and you said, hey, look, I'm going to be cash pay or direct pay.
Well, initially, yes, I dropped a lot of insurances and I was cash pay. Now, so there's a whole evolution of what has taken place in my life since then. So it wasn't just when I started doing specialty care, I was still the operator. I was still working very hard. I created time in my schedule where I didn't book anybody that was insurance patients. And if I didn't have patients in that block of schedule, I learned and I honed in on my craft for the specialty care, and I learned and studied and read journals and whatever it took to become an expert or subject matter expert in that area. But over the years, then so I dropped insurances and I said, well, why am I doing that? I need to take the insurance as a funnel and I need to hire more providers, doctors, and have them see the patients and have them refer to me as the specialty doc. So then I made another pivot where I needed to become, I needed to become just the specialty doctor, and I didn't want to see. So I re-enrolled in the insurance panels, but I hired more people and I hired doctors to do that, and so they now see the patients. And then there was another evolution where I said, well, I really don't want to work this hard, and then I don't want to have to be in my practice. So this is very recent in the last couple of years where I've really focused on from being an operator to being an owner of my practice, where I don't have to go in if I don't have to go in. If I don't want to go in. So now, I'm on my another journey of pivoting towards complete ownership, where I don't have to be the provider to not even one single patient, but I oversee my practice still, without having to. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that's important is when she moved this transition to private pay, what happens is you've got to rely on marketing dollars, right? If you're doing only private pay, you have to spend a lot of money on marketing. And so what we realized is that instead of spending all this money on marketing, right, and the conversion becomes a little lower, is we need to do is to get on one or two, just a select couple of insurance plans that give you traffic into the office, right? And once that traffic comes in, the flow and the funnel is to pivot a certain percentage of that population into private pay. And that works really, really, really well. So you have specialists out there, gastroenterologists, for example, or whoever the other doctors might be, they're still doing reimbursed market. But a number of doctors, like for example, let's take an ophthalmologist. Ophthalmologist does cataract surgery, hundreds of cataract surgeries, thousands of cataract surgeries a year. But how many of those patients are pivoting toward premium intraocular lenses? Only 10%. And if you just make that shift and getting that conversion to 20%, there's a lot more revenue, a lot more freedom, a lot more satisfaction that comes with it. So that's kind of what one model we looked at for her practice. And that's what we see very successful is, looking at what you do very carefully and saying, I want to do this, and then focusing on that, but being practical and saying, okay, you know what? How am I going to get that business into me? That's really key. That's a very important question. And so we do that all day long with our practices that we work with.
So let me throw a scenario, but before I do that, I want to just highlight this company, Hoot, that you've created. So is this model where you encourage them to stick with their insurances, but cherry pick them, and then bring from the insurances, choose, there's probably a specialty or a procedure or a service that the provider is providing, but yes, this allows them to get pre-educated, nurtured, and they're ready to make a intelligent decision on higher level care. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So essentially, we've got doctors see tons of patients they go to their website, who may or may not book an appointment. Right? That's number one. Number two is when they do come into their clinic and they do an exam of some sort, a number of them are candidates, let's say 50%, let's say 10% are candidates of a specialty care. What happens is doctors often overcomplicate things in the exam room and they try to sell in one setting, for example, right? Try to close the deal because doctors want to solve the problem, right? And what happens is they don't solve the problem. Patients don't sign up. And so what we do is we created a system. The Hoot is basically a marketing automation system with three main things. The first is a process. We optimize the system, the process that you have in your practice. So we plug the leaks. Two, we give you the language. I know you don't want to hear it, okay? Sales language, yes. Sales and marketing language. We teach you what to say, when to say, how to say it. And third is we have videos of you that you upload into a portal and we create them for you. We with them. And throughout the patient journey, the patients get this drip marketing on their text, on their phone. because human beings make healthcare decisions not in the exam room, but in the kitchen and in the bedroom. When they go home, talk to their wife and say, honey, the doctor told me I have to do this. Check out this video. So that's our system. That's Hoot. It's deployed for hundreds of practices nationwide. Right now, we're in eye care. We actually launched into a ketamine clinic recently where ketamine, again, private pay, $4,000. Patients don't know what it is. The patients get educated before they come in. Ophthalmology, cataract surgery, dermatology, plastic surgery. All of these are specialty dentistry. All of these are doctors who have some portion of their business as private pay specialty, where it's complicated to explain. And that's kind of what we solve. We solve that problem, getting those doctors more revenue with that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What's a case study you can share with us of a really successful client?
Yeah. So we have a doctor. Her name is Dr. Patel, and she's fantastic. She's in Florida, and she bought this very expensive piece of equipment, okay, for $100,000 and for treating dry eye disease. Doctors, for some reason, love their instruments. I don't know what it is. They love these beautiful instruments. They go to a show. Optometrists certainly do. So she bought this instrument. It was $120,000 for treating dry eye disease, and it sat there. And it really bothered her because she's made these payments every month, and she had only 1 or 2 patients sign up per month. And she had all these patients, 50, 60 of them in a month that would be candidates for it, but only 1 or 2 would sign up. And so she joined Hoot as a member, and we gave her training, and she's like, Bob, I'm not getting it, I understand it. Shefali does coaching calls with these doctors to explain about the psychology. I talk about marketing. I talk about slowing things down, the language and different. Anyway, she said at some point, she's like, Bob, I don't know if I can do this. This is so much. I don't know. I'm like, Dr. Patel, hang in there. This is about you and the person you're going to become. It's not about getting 2 more patients. And she said, what do you mean? I said, you will change and become better, faster, stronger. Stick with it. And she stuck with it. And then she called me over the summer last year, and she said, I don't know what's happening, but I've gotten like 6, 7 patients to sign up in the last 2 weeks. I said, what? She goes, I don't know. Something's going on. I'm like, Dr. Patel, nothing's going on. It's you. It's you that's going on. She goes, well, the videos and your system. I said, no. It's not about me. I'm a guide. You are the hero. You're the one who made this happen. And she was thrilled. Now she's getting, 6 or 7 patients almost weekly. And she's like, I am so blown away with what's possible when I stick to something, do something hard, follow the process, and change. And so she's so much happier now. She's now doing more private pay, specialty care than ever before. She's very happy. And more importantly, she has freedom, fulfillment, and a lot more fun in life.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's talk. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about some challenges here. What's been sort of a eating glass moment, as Elon Musk likes to describe it for you guys?
Yeah.
You can have individual ones or
yeah. So for me, I mean, what I see when I deal with doctors today, I think there's this frustration I see, which is so many of them are on this hamster wheel and they're afraid to get off. And they're afraid to change. The big C word, it's like change. But their future, because so much private equity is buying up practices and rolling them up across the country, they're clearly unhappy. They're clearly having their staff run them versus them running their staff. And they clearly have opportunity, but they don't take action. I get really, really frustrated. I'm very passionate about this because I saw this in my wife's practice. I see it in her. I see the change. I'll tell you one little quick story. One of the things she always wanted to do when she was running her business, she's like, I want to go to Paris and buy this, the boy bag. The boy bag. What is it? Louis Vuitton? Chanel. Sorry, I don't know these brands. I don't know. And so but she did it. She was frustrated and she started changing and she grew so much. And she was like, we're finally able to take vacation, went to Paris.
My dream was to actually take vacation for 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row.
And I never did it.
Oh, wow.
Never. I didn't know what 2
Imagine
weeks
not
in
taking
a row. felt like, and it was just like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to have that kind of freedom? I mean, even when I went to India to visit my family, I would go for like 9 days, 8 days. It was never 2 weeks. I was like, oh my gosh, when am I going to be able to take 2 weeks off? So that was my
Yeah.
motivation. Like, I want to be able to take 2 weeks off and not worry about it. Because even when I had that week off, I was checking in on my staff and stressed out on the beach, stressed out and solving problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
that was just, this is crazy.
I think, eating glass moment is when someone needs to change and you're kind of afraid to tell them, but now I no longer do that. I eat the glass, I eat the frog, whatever, Brian Tracy wrote an amazing book called Eat the Frog. But basically I tell them exactly. I'm like, some doctors come to me and say, I don't know about it. I said, listen, I'm just going to tell you, don't be an idiot. Like, do something, change. I actually tell them because I said, I know what it feels like to be you in your shoes. I understand the pain it requires to change but you must change to grow. There is no growth without change. And I've seen it. So that for me is very important.
Yeah, I mean, when I do coaching calls with these doctors, sometimes I get frustrated because it's their state. Like if their state is low and they're just kind of there's no energy in them, it's hard. Because most of the problem is their mindset problem. I can teach them the process, the language, the vision. I can show them the vision. But if their energy is just low, it ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's say there are 10 potential people who are ready to take their practice to the next level, whatever that means for them. What would you say is sort of a 30-day game plan for them to elevate their state, increase their energy, get more certainty, more focus, get clarity? Like what's a tactical, I want you guys to be tacticians right now and actually share like strategies that people can up level right now.
Yeah.
Well, first you have to identify the problems in their life, and then it's a life problem. A lot of them are having, and it's usually common. Everything runs common in, human condition is the same. They have family, they have practice, they have staff that doesn't listen to them, or they just don't know what's going on with their practices. So identifying the problems and then creating a vision for them that what's the compelling future look like for you? Let's decide, what does that compelling future look like for you? Let's write it down. And then what are the steps that are needed to change your mindset? So first you have to change their mindset. It's the human mindset that needs to be changed. And then the tactical stuff from the practice is easy stuff. Once their mindset is different and they are on a different vibration level of just having more energy, or they're exercising every day and they have this compelling future that gets them out of bed, the rest of the logistics are easy to implement and put it in place. So the doctors that are successful are the ones who make those basic changes in their lives. Imagine a bigger future and change.
It sounds like you're saying from inward to outward, right?
Yes.
Like master the inner game, and then the outer game takes care of itself.
Yes.
Let's also talk about, you mentioned fitness, and obviously we'll talk about mindset in a second, but fitness, I was reading a study, I think like a lot of multimillionaires happen to be in very good shape. Do you think that's a coincidence?
Oh no, I don't think so at all. I've traveled to 50 countries. My career, I've stayed in the best hotels in the world. Okay. And at 5 a.m., Vikram, every one of those beautiful, beautiful, very expensive hotels are busy at the gym. The gyms are packed at 5, 6, 7, 8 a.m. because very successful people realize there's a mind-body connection. If you can't get your body in a good place, you will never be able to get your mind in a good place. And you know that. I mean, you run these mastermind groups. One of the things I would say is a practical thing is you've got to join Vikram's masterminds, because that is the way to have continuous accountability. What Shefali and I do is psychology from a pivot, premium service, specialty care business and practice. That's a little bit different. I think, I'd love to know what you think doctors should be doing right now when it comes to fitness and why that's important.
Yeah, I think, how you do anything is really how you do everything, as we know. And so it starts with, like, as Shefali says, state. But what does state really mean? It means your physiology, right? And so it's drilling down into that. And then the most successful clients that I have, the most doctors, the most successful entrepreneurs, real estate guys I know, everyone has a morning routine. Everyone has a structure. And, as Jocko Willink likes to say, discipline equals freedom. And so a lot of people think discipline takes away freedom, but no, it actually creates space for that freedom to happen. And it's really not these huge mega projects that are going to get you well. It's the consistency of the micro wins day after day, right? And it's starting with those micro wins. So like if you had some clients who are going in, it's like, all right, first start with workouts probably, right? Second is like, all right,
Yep.
get a clarity on your vision in week 2, maybe. Week 3, okay, let's start educating your patients a little bit. Okay, week 4, let's start rolling out this, the system. So I think you break it down into, how do you swallow a whale, right, in small pieces. So like that's how you go after these huge monumental projects. But the thing is, really, if they don't have a powerful enough why, like that Dr. Patel example, they'll quit. They'll quit in week 2, week 4, whether it's my program, your program, or anyone else's program, right? You got to have the most successful people also have longer time frames.
Yes.
Nowadays, it's like, hey, lose weight in 5 days, get rich in 15 days. It's, versus 15 years or 10 years.
Yeah.
The longer, like, if you have a long enough time frame, you can win with the right help and the right strategy.
Yeah, you've got to be open to receiving too as well. And the one thing I want to mention, fitness wise, is the reason it plays out, actually not in your life, right, is also in your practice or your business, is because of energy. We had a doctor recently we were coaching, and she wasn't, getting it. I said, Shefali, why don't you talk to her? Her business is declining. And so we got on a call with her, and Shefali got off the call, and she's like, her energy was so low. And how is she speaking to patients? If she's speaking to patients with that level of energy, it was just really low. It was like lethargic. She was tired. And, and so it translates. Energy is infectious. When you're interested, passionate, engaged, and that comes from the exercise routine in the morning, meditation, whatever that is, and then it comes into your business with clients and patients and customers, people feel that energy. And they want to be associated with that positive, outcome. So to me, it's all about energy creation, and that you can only do first thing in the morning and do the routines. We exercise every day. We do the meditation every day. Increasingly, I'm doing more weight training than ever as I get older in my 50s. It's very more important than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially for women.
Yeah.
Yeah. The energy, I think, is the highest form of currency an entrepreneur or a doctor can have. And so that's a mandate for them to create and cultivate. Number 2 is, I think, sales. Another way to use the word sales, the number one buzzword I like for sales is really conviction. And conviction comes from absolute certainty that this is the right pathway for that person. And in a conversation, the person with the most conviction wins, right? And so let's break into how you help doctors influence. Let's use that because sales is nothing but influence, right? And Robert Cialdini talks about those principles, but let's talk about how you teach some of these principles to the doctors.
Yeah. So one powerful technique we use is what I call the 3 hats strategy. Okay. And the 3 hat strategy, we have a lot of training. We have a very extensive training program. We have basically it's a 4 weeks training program. And each week there's an hour session that talks about process. Second, it's about language you use, what language to use, not too much clinical language, but really language. And, the third is connection. How do you develop a rapport with a patient? Too often doctors go into solving the problem, but not talking about the why the patient has the problem, right? And the lesson I learned is nobody cares about you, they care about themselves. So you've got to connect with the patient. And then the final pieces of it is education. How do you educate? So that's our training program. But the 3 hat strategy is, look, you need to first be a clinician and you diagnose the condition. So we talk to doctors about how to, what they do in diagnosis and make sure that's on point. The second is the educator hat. You must put on the educator hat, which means why this problem is happening to you, Mr. Jones. It's happening to you because you're on these devices a lot, you're not blinking enough, and you've got dry eye disease, meibomian gland dysfunction. So educating them, speaking the, and then the third hat is very important. And Shefali actually really just developed this concept, which is the mind reader hat. You must bring out objections they have in their head. Doc, why do I have to do this? So you have to say that to them in advance. Say, you have to be a mind reader hat and say, Mr. Jones, you're probably wondering, why do I have to do this treatment? I don't feel the symptoms. And the answer to that question is the following. So that's kind of the way we teach our system. Our system is a 4-week plan. We do, we do coaching once a month. We do coaching calls. But the 3-hat strategy is really the cornerstone of how we must educate patients and build a beautiful specialty care practice that has, fun, fulfillment, and profit. I mean, I think the mind reading hat strategy is something that works really well in your practice, right? Just basically, what you say is having conviction. We use the word confidence, which is, it's a synonym, right? Conviction. Once doctors believe that the patient deserves that treatment for the right reasons, they'll have the confidence and the conviction to bring that energy to them to say, look, I think you need to do this. Go ahead. I think you should need to move forward in this treatment. And that's a win-win for everybody because the patient benefit and the doctors benefit.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be a subject matter expert, you better know all the questions that they have, the top 3 questions that they already are thinking. You should address that. And it's impressive to the customer or the patient when you are addressing those questions without the customer asking you those questions. So, that's gone a long way in my practice. And then connection is a huge part. I've created space in my schedule to connect with them on a human level.
Yeah.
And going back to what you said, Vikram, is, energy or sales and, as a conviction, that conviction is transferred in form of energy. You're right. So it is so important to like them and be liked back, and appreciate the humanness in them, and appreciate the human condition that we're all sharing, and be humble. And when you come from that place of sharing, of trying to solve their problem, of making their lives better because of this change that you're about to make or present to them, it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
That they get it. It's not serving your own purpose. It has to serve a common purpose of making humanity better. So I do believe that every doctor is in that privileged place where we make other people's lives better. But sometimes that you have to get out of that mind frame that only an insurance company will pay for it, or that you don't deserve thousands of dollars for doing this, because people will spend the money where they think the value is. You just have to show them the value. But the total package has to be there. The human connection, the energy transfer of energy. That's how sales takes place. Is transfer. You're influencing, you're transferring of energy. So all of we teach our doctors all of those principles, which I've learned, in my through my 25 years of practicing now, and being older now, just knowing about.
Well, I have an example. Yesterday, I had a call with a doctor, and she was sells this premium service. It's typically costs $2,500, $2,500. And I said, well, how are you presenting this to patients? She goes, well, I see the patients in the clinic. And I immediately started talking about the solution, the treatment, the price, and everything. And I said, and the patient is a parent of 3 children. And I said, I said, so she left and she didn't sign up for your treatment. She goes, no, she didn't sign up. I said, well, let me ask you, are you a parent? And she is. She's a parent of 4 children. I said, what gets your attention? She said, pain, problem. I said, okay, have you demonstrated pain or a problem to that patient? No, no one cares. We're in an attention economy today. You must grab people's attention, and softness, and it's caring, and it's wonderful, but people only pay attention to pain and a problem today. People are walking around their heads about the problem of they're overweight, they don't make enough money and all that. And so they're looking for solutions, but you must demonstrate to them some level of the pain and how big the problem is. Going back to your earlier question is, how do doctors change? How do people change? Is you've got to show them the numbers, show them the problem, so they magnify the problem, so that they realize, oh my gosh, shit, I got to do something to change in order to get to the solution.
And this is done in an ethical way, guys. Like for the listeners out there, the goal is, look, if you're
Oh, absolutely.
as a diabetic, like as a cardiologist, I would take care of thousands of diabetics. But I had to stir up when I was in the insurance system, and then later on, I moved into functional medicine, where I was really trying to actually reverse disease instead of manage it. But when I was just trying to manage them, I would try to like show them, like, look, if they don't take action, then they can lose a foot, they can have a heart attack, they can do all these things. But because diabetes is sort of a painless disease at the beginning, they don't feel, quote unquote, the pain. Now, like if they had an ulcer, they'd be like, oh, doctor, you got to help me, right? So, and then when I was in functional medicine, I had to really show them like the downstream effects. I got to talk to how it affects their family, and I had to get into their psychology. And you know, it was a whole process. But then when they finally got it, oh, they're like, yes, let's go.
Yeah.
And if doctors want to have the impact that they really want to have, they have to become a clinical psychologist. They have to wear
Absolutely.
an armchair psychologist and learn, you know, pain and pleasure, you know, what motivates human beings, as you guys know. So as we wrap up here, I want to hear about your top books. And if I gave you a whole year of Times Square where you could blast a message, what would that message be? So I'm going to start with Bob, and then I give Shefali some time to think.
Oh my God.
Well,
Give me your most pivotal or influential book in the last 12 months, and then I want to hear what the message you want to have on Times Square.
well, my favorite book in the last 12 months is 10x is easier than 2x by Benjamin Hardy and oh my God, I'm skipping the name here. But it's fantastic.
Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan, sorry, Dan Sullivan. Yeah, 10x is easier than 2x. It really, you know, the premise of the book is that you've got to become bolder and bigger by focusing on the hardest achievable goals, because everything you're doing the same amount of work, in fact. And so you might as well do something really big and bold. And then what happens is all the other stuff just falls away. And it focuses on this, Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, right? So focus on the biggest goal you have. Everything else will fall away. And then you'll be able to get to that huge goal that you want to do. So really focusing energy on the most important things that to me, and then, you know, in terms of what I would suggest people think about as a tip or advice for their lives, it's to embrace change. The most important thing today, healthcare is changing dramatically. Doctors are no longer called doctors, called providers. There are more and more nurse practitioners, allied health professionals that are coming onto the market. And so doctors feel there's something going on, but they're not, you know, they don't change. And what I'm suggesting is take the first step, take your course, Vikram, you know, join a mastermind group of like-minded people who want to grow or committed to growing themselves. And then if you really want to pivot your business, you know, give us a call. But to me, it's really about embracing change as the most important thing I would share.
That's very nice. So one of my most one of the favorite books is Influenced by Robert Cialdini. I used a lot of his concepts in my practice and in my life, and it's really panned out. And the Times Square, I would ask them, what does their ideal future look like? What does their perfect future look like? And if people just don't have the guts to imagine what their perfect future looks like, and when they imagine that and they focus on that, everything shifts in your life. Every action shifts, every day shifts, every hour shifts. But you have to imagine that perfect future, what that looks like, because, you know, that's what you know, you have one life to live.
Yeah.
So, and then that's when you can make the change. So your billboard goes underneath.
There we go. Okay. Yes, honey.
That's amazing, guys. Wow. What a story. What a amazing business you've created. What a beautiful practice, and obviously an amazing life. How can people get into your ecosystem, your universe, and learn about your services, or just want to reach out to you guys?
Sure. So go to gethoot.com, GETHOOT.com, gethoot.com. And then Shefali is ShefaliMiglani.com. And sure, SHEFALI MIGLANI.com. limitlessimd.com. Shefali actually takes high-level people, performance people to India to have a life-changing, beautiful experience. A little bit of a happiness trip she's put together, and she's done it with 70 people last year. So, maybe you're going to do it this year, Shefali. What are you thinking? We'll see.
That's amazing, guys. Wow. Thank you so much for your knowledge, for your stories, for your wisdom. Appreciate it. I think our listeners are going to really love this episode. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Vikram.
Thank
you so much.
Yeah. All right, guys. Until next time, be phenomenal.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Limitless MD. If you found value from this episode, I encourage you to share this episode with a friend and let me know by leaving a review. For more information, make sure you check out the links in the show notes below or simply visit vikramraya.com. Until next time, be phenomenal.